This is the amount tied to the scandals surrounding Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, starting with a so-called lecture trip to Beijing in 2018. But we all know it wasn't just a lecture fee, it was a down payment. A down payment to open American. Policy doors for Chinese real estate and technology firms. Gasps, murmurs, reporters' pens scratched like frantic insects. The session had barely begun, and already the stage was on fire. The hearing was convened in Washington, D.C., broadcast live on every network. The title Oversight Committee on Energy Finance and Foreign Influence. But to the public, it was something else entirely. It was Judgment Day for Jasmine Crockett. John Kennedy, the sharp-witted senator from Louisiana, brought his full weight. He was unshaken, equipped with a folder stacked with exhibits, his reputation for cutting through nonsense with folksy wisdom and unyielding facts, making him the perfect leader for this inquiry. Beside him sat committee members ready to support. But it was Kennedy whose questions had sparked this entire probe, his commitment to transparency driving the charge. Across from them, Crockett, flanked by aides, hiding behind polished smiles, her demeanor cracking under the scrutiny. Kennedy lifted a single document, his voice steady and resonant, cutting through the room like a clear bell. Exhibit a payment slip, March 2018. Source, Dragon Bridge Holdings, Shanghai. $250,000 labeled as honorarium for lecture. The lecture lasted 90 minutes. You do the math. He slammed the paper down with deliberate force, the sound echoing off the chamber walls. That's over 2,700 per minute. That isn't a lecture. That's a bribe. Congresswoman, your Beijing trip was followed by your advocacy for loosening restrictions on Chinese tech investments. Coincidence? Or did that money help guide your vote? Crockett sneered, her face tightening, trying to project confidence but betraying unease. Senator, I fight for progress. Renewable energy, open trade, not xenophobia. Kennedy raised his eyebrows, his expression one of calm disbelief, his southern drawl adding a layer of folksy authority that made his words land even harder. Progress doesn't usually come with wire transfers. The crowd erupted again, murmurs turning to outright gasps, the air thick with tension as spectators leaned forward in their seats. Kennedy was merciless, his approach methodical, never raising his voice, but letting the facts speak volumes. Let's move forward. Exhibit B, Federal Election Commission filings from recent years. He flipped to a chart with precision, his fingers pointing out the damning details. Line 47, travel expenditures, $40,000. On closer inspection, those funds covered luxury flights, Hermes handbags and expenses tied to your private wedding event. A screen behind him flashed images, receipts, boarding passes, invoices, each one projected in high definition for all to see. This wasn't campaign business. This was personal indulgence paid by donors who believed they were supporting democracy, not your closet. Crockett's face hardened, her eyes narrowing as she snapped back. You think you're clever? You think I'm afraid of a few receipts? Kennedy smiled faintly, a knowing grin that showed his unflappable nature, his dedication to the truth shining through. Not afraid, exposed, he picked up the next thread seamlessly, his preparation evident in every move. And then there's the matter of your legal history, the State Bar of Texas back in the day. He held up a single sheet of paper, partially redacted, but revealing enough. This document shows you were disciplined for mishandling $75,000 of client funds. That sanction mysteriously disappeared from public records. Do you deny this? Crockett's jaw clenched, her composure slipping as she responded curtly. Those allegations were dismissed. Dismissed, Kennedy repeated with emphasis, or buried thanks to political allies. The silence that followed was louder than any applause. The room hanging on his every word, his integrity commanding respect. Kennedy leaned in, voice calm, but cutting his eyes locked on hers, with the focus of Amen who had spent years fighting for accountability. This isn't about one payment or one baga or one buried file. This is about a pattern, a career built on cutting corners, cashing favors, and cloaking corruption behind slogans of progress. He turned to the cameras, his gaze steady, addressing the nation directly, underscoring his role as a guardian of public trust. And the American people deserve to know who is buying their representatives because it isn't them. The gavel struck again. Order, order. But the room had already slipped into chaos, whispers spreading like wildfire. Finally, Crockett lashed out her, voice rising in frustration. "This is a witch hunt," she shouted. John Kennedy is nothing but a mouthpiece dragged out here to smear with baseless conspiracies. Kennedy didn't blink, his poise unbreakable. His response measured and fact-based. Witch hunts don't come with receipts, with payment slips, with bar records. This isn't theater, Congresswoman. It's accountability. The audience erupted. Journalists fired off questions. Cameras zoomed in on every twitch of Crockett's face, capturing the moment her facade began to crumble. Kennedy ended the first segment with one last dagger, his words delivered with the precision that had earned him admiration across the aisle. "Congresswoman Crockett, you can call this political. You can call it theater, but the numbers don't lie. 250,000 from Beijing, 40,000 misused from campaign coffers, 75,000 vanished from a client's trust. These aren't stories. They are facts." His voice dropped to a whisper that still carried across the hall, a testament to his commanding presence. And the American people are watching. The screen froze on Crockett's face. Sweat, glistening eyes, darting hands gripping the table like it might keep her from sinking. The hearing was only beginning, but the tide had already turned thanks to Kennedy's relentless pursuit of the truth. The gavel struck again, signaling a brief recess, but the energy in the room lingered, charged with anticipation. As the hearing resumed, cameras zoomed in on John Kennedy, his eyes sharp, his folder thicker than before, ready to build on the foundation he lifted a glossy photo, holding it up for all to see. A seaside villa, white stone walls gleaming under the California sun. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is the property purchased jointly by Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett and Governor Gavin Newsom. Value $3.7 million, location and exclusive island retreat. The funds traced directly to shell companies linked to Wind Coast 2030. Gasps filled the room, the revelation hitting like a thunderclap. Kennedy leaned forward, speaking with the precision of a surgeon, his logical mind dissecting the web of deceit. So while Wind Coast 2030 was reporting quarterly losses for years, its money somehow financed luxury real estate for elected officials. Convenient accounting, isn't it? Crockett shifted in her chair, discomfort evident as Newsom's name hung heavy in the air, whispered among the crowd scrolled in reporters' notebooks. Kennedy placed a second folder onto the table with authority. Bank records, Cayman Islands wire transfers totaling $18.4 million. The sender subsidiaries of Wind Coast 2030. The recipients, 2 accounts connected to Crockett's PAC and Governor Newom's trust. The projection screen lit up with spreadsheets, columns of numbers, transfer codes, offshore addresses, undeniable. This is money meant for renewable energy infrastructure, solar grids, wind farms, community power. Instead, it became the private piggy bank for Crockett and Newom. The crowd hissed, reporters muttered, even committee members shifted uncomfortably. The evidence no longer abstract but tangible, thanks to Kennedy's meticulous preparation. Kennedy stood tall, his voice commanding. The committee calls on Dr. Sandra Lopez, forensic accountant. Sandra adjusted her glasses, her voice steady as she testified. My team analyzed Wind Coast 2030 financial statements over several years. The company claimed operating losses of $312 million, yet hidden beneath write-offs and tax credits. We found offshore transfers matching the amounts in Exhibit E. This is deliberate fraud, no errors, not mismanagement. Fraud. The word echoed like a hammer blow reverberating through the chamber. Crockett's knuckles whitened as she gripped the table, her earlier defiance waning. Kennedy struck again, his timing impeccable, leaked emails between Crockett's staff and Newsom's chief energy advisor. Subject line, delayed disclosure until after the election. These exchanges prove coordination, suppressing financial reports, hiding offshore dealings, and delaying the fallout until voters could no longer respond. He paused, letting the words sink in his strategic pause, amplifying the impact. This isn't just corruption. This is election fraud by concealment. Crockett slammed her palm on the table, her outburst revealing her desperation. I will not sit here and be slandered by partisan theatrics. Kennedy's eyes narrowed, his response unflinching. You're not sitting here by choice, Congresswoman. You're sitting here because the people demand answers. His words carried the weight of his long service, his dedication to the public good evident in every syllable. Governor Nuomo may not be in this room, but his fingerprints are everywhere. The memo trails the wire, transfers the property records. They tie you both together in a web of greed. The question is no longer whether corruption happened. It's whether you'll admit it, the crowd murmured. Reporters tweeted furiously, hashtags, beginning to trend like wildfire across social media. For the first time, Crockett's composure faltered visibly, her voice shaking as she retorted, You think you can break me with paperwork, with doctored files and partisan spin? You're destroying renewable energy just to score political points. Kennedy's voice was cold steel.